Welcome to the Real Estate Roundtable. This is the first in a series of real estate videos where I'm going to try and give you, the buyer and seller of real estate, key information in the transaction, market information, all different types of things related to residential real estate here in South Florida. First question I have for you, Gary, is, Douglas Elliman is a New York-based firm primarily, and we deal with a lot of buyers that are coming down from New York to the Florida market to purchase homes. And there are definitely nuances, differences between the way they do business in New York and the way we do business here in the real estate transaction. Would you like to please illuminate for us some of the differences?
Yeah, it's a completely different market. In New York, it's very commonplace to have dealings between sellers and buyers without the formalities of a contract. There'll be maybe even almost kind of letters of intent, understandings. In some cases, people do inspections so that they know exactly what they're buying before they go into a contract. In Florida, it's completely different. Down in Florida, you have a contract, you submit an offer, and buyers sometimes don't really understand the nuances of what they're signing. They're signing an offer, and if the other side accepts it, it becomes a legally binding contract on them. Very different from New York. And people in Florida really need to understand that if they're coming down from New York. I mean, that's one major difference. I mean, there are some other, major differences also. So another concept in Florida that we have is that when we set a date for closing, or any performance date in a contract, it's a fixed date.
Like such as the dates to make deposits, escrow deposits, the dates for inspection. Those are also the dates you're referring to?
Those are absolutely fixed dates.
And the way I see it coming up most is on a closing date. And having the opportunity to have worked with many buyers from New York, as I'm sure you have, I can tell you that it's quite common that they'll say, well, it doesn't really matter that my closing date is the 30th of October. I'm going to go ahead and close 2 weeks later. And it's always a battle for us to try to explain to them that, in fact, time is of the essence in this market. It's critical that they understand that going in. And like you were mentioning on the nuances in contracts and the strategy and the way that a transaction is completed in the state of Florida versus New York, realtors are drafting contracts here. And they're using these forms. And so it's really important, and I'm sure you would agree, that buyers get a real estate lawyer involved in the transaction when they get started with it. Because as you mentioned, by the time they have this signed document that they might think is a letter of intent, in fact, it's a binding contract.
Absolutely. Buying a home is usually one of the single biggest purchases that somebody makes. And you can't underestimate the seriousness and the ramifications of the contracts that you enter into. And when you enter into the contract, you really need to understand all of the nuances of Florida.